You know it's happened to you before. You head into the second song of your worship set. You get to the bridge, and it's the climax of the song, and you're building up out of the bridge, and then you head into a huge chorus, and it's at that point that you finally open your eyes, and you look out in the congregation, and all you see is blank stares, people not paying attention, people who aren't engaged in worship. Well, in this video, I'm going to teach you 3 easy ways to lose your congregation in worship. So if you want to have that experience every single week, I'm going to teach you how in this video coming up. Hey, Spencer here from leadingworshipwell.com. This is the place where we talk about how to lead yourself well, lead your church well, and lead worship well. Before we get into things, make sure to check out the link in the description below to the free PDF I put together called The Worship Rehearsal Blueprint. If you are a worship team leader, you need to have a great worship rehearsal to make sure that your team is led well. Worship rehearsals are the best time to do that, and that's why I put together this blueprint so that you can have the best worship rehearsal you've ever had. There's 5 specific parts to it. I even give you an outline of a sample worship rehearsal schedule of what one could look like for you so that you make sure that you lead your team well, spiritually, relationally, and musically. So check that out in the description below. Other than that, though, in this video, we're talking about how to lose your congregation in worship. Now, obviously, we don't want to lose our congregation in worship, and I explained to you at the beginning of this video what that might look like when people aren't engaged in worship. Basically, that's what I mean by you losing your congregation in worship. And if you've ever experienced that before, just maybe put like a raised hand emoji or thumbs up emoji down in the comments before, or say, I have experienced that before, where you look out, like I said, in a song that you're leading and nobody is paying attention. Nobody is engaged in worship. I hope by sharing with you how to easily lose your congregation in worship, I will teach you how to not lose your congregation in worship. So these 3 things I'm about to tell you, don't do them, and you'll be good. So let's learn what those 3 things are. The first is this: pick song keys that only you can sing. Pick song keys that only you can sing in. If you want to lose your church in musical worship, make it really, really difficult for them to sing along with you. Make it really, really hard for them to hit that high note in the bridge, and you will successfully lose your church in worship because they will not want to stretch their voices to sing with you. And I hear you. I hear the counter argument to this all the time. Well, if people want to worship, people will worship. And yes, I agree. They will. But we're also in charge of leading musical worship. There's other ways to lead worship. If you want to lead other ways to lead worship, go ahead and do that. But we're focused on musical worship. And what does musical worship mean? It means that people are singing, right? So we've got to make it easy for them to sing. Now, how do you do this? Well, I just want to point to this video right here about how to put your songs in a singable key. If you need the process for that, you can check it out right there. There's a whole process that you can follow, and I think it will help you out. But I just want to say this to kind of frame this understanding. There's 2 schools of thought that I've seen. The first is this, where people pick song keys. They say the song key for the worship song should be whatever is most comfortable for the worship leader. And if the worship leader can make it sound good, and if they can be like enthusiastic about singing it, all of these things, then the congregation will sing along because they'll see that and they'll follow suit, right? So that's the first way of thinking about it. But the way I think about it is we've got to understand that we, hopefully, are above average in terms of musicianship in our church. If you are a singer in your church, you probably have a more expanded range than the rest of your church members because they aren't singing on a regular basis. They haven't worked to strengthen their voice. They haven't learned the techniques that you have learned. They don't know about pharyngeal resonance. Is that the phrase? I feel like I said that wrong. I don't know. I'm not like a super well-versed singer. I lead worship. But even I, who have not been trained vocally but have an adequate singing voice, I hope, I am above an average musicianship level in my church because 99% of the people in your church aren't musicians, or maybe it's a little bit less than that, like 90% of people in your church aren't musicians. The majority of people in your church are not musicians, and they can't hit those high notes because they don't know how to sing in falsetto, and they don't know how to do all of those vocal techniques that you know how to do, and they haven't been strengthening their voice. So, if you want to lose them, start picking songs and keys where they have to utilize those things and do like these crazy octave jumps where nobody can sing along with you. That is a great way to lose your church during worship and make them stop singing. Pick songs that only you can sing because the key is super high. Let's move on to the next one. In relation to that, not only can you pick songs and put them in keys that only you can sing, but you can also pick songs that only you want to sing. Pick songs that only you want to sing. You know those songs that you love, but you've probably done it before. We've all done this. We've heard a song on a radio, or it's track number 7 on a John Mark McMillan CD. I always pick on John Mark McMillan because I love John Mark McMillan's music, but I would very rarely use it for my church. That's why I pick on him. But you pick these songs that are like these amazing worship songs for you when you're driving around in your car, or they're stuck in your head all day and you're singing them in the shower, or when you're mowing the lawn or whatever, and you're like, man, this is a great song. I know this has all happened to us before. And then you think, well, I should do that song in my church. If I like that song, everybody in my church is going to love that song. And so you plan it. You do it with your worship team. You step on stage on Sunday to lead it for the first time, and nobody sings along with you. And so what do? We lie to ourselves and say, well, this was the first Sunday, so nobody knew the song anyways. And then you've done the song 9 more times, and still nobody's singing with you because nobody wants to sing that song. Because why? Now, let's talk about why they might not want to sing a song. First of all, maybe it's a style that isn't conducive to congregational worship. Maybe it just doesn't work in a congregational setting. I find that a lot of the worship songs that I like personally don't work in a congregational setting because, once again, we're musicians, right? We like complex music that has like syncopation and interesting musical elements all throughout it that we can pick apart as musicians. But the average person in your church doesn't think that way. Why do you think pop music is popular? I guess that's what pop stands for, is popular, right? Why do you think popular music is popular? It's because it's dumbed down, right? That's what we always say. We're like, I hate pop music because it's so dumbed down. But why do people like dumbed down music? It's because they aren't musicians like us, and they don't appreciate the musical intricacies that we do. I'm sounding very pretentious when I'm saying this, but I truly believe that that is the case. That's why 4-chord worship songs are popular. It doesn't mean that they're bad songs. I'm not saying that pop songs are bad songs. I'm just saying they serve a different function than what we as a musician would typically like. So, back to the original point. If you were to lose your congregation, pick songs that only you want to sing. Conversely, what would you do? If you want your congregation to be engaged in worship, you would pick songs that they need to sing and that they can sing. Think about what's going on in the life of my church right now. What song can help them respond to that? Is there heartbreak in your church? Remind them of God's faithfulness. remind them of God's faithfulness. What is going on in the life of my church right now? And what words can I give them to sing? Not what's going on in my life right now and what songs do I want to sing, what words do I need to sing, but what words do they need to sing? Let's move on to the final reason, number 3. Finally, number 3, the easiest way to lose your congregation in worship, your church in worship, is to focus on personal worship instead of corporate worship. And this is related to the other 2 points. If you haven't noticed, the theme in this is if you want to lose your congregation in worship, focus on yourself instead of them. If you want to engage your congregation in worship, focus on them instead of yourself. So the last one, focus on personal worship instead of congregational worship if you want to lose your church in worship. And this is related to the other ones because if you're picking songs with keys that only you can sing in, picking songs that only you really want to sing, then you're probably focused on personal worship. But when we gather as a church, we are here to gather and worship together. We aren't here to have our own personal times of worship in our own little pockets around our worship space. We are here to worship together, and that's what corporate means. Corpus is the beginning etymology of the word corporate. It means body, right? And how appropriate, because the church is the body of Christ. So we are gathering together as one body, corporate worship. We are doing it together. And so I've kind of covered that idea in the first 2 points, but when I talk about personal worship, us focusing on personal worship instead of congregational worship, in this point I'm talking about when you get up on stage and you think, my job is just to model worship. It is to just close my eyes and worship God. And everybody will see me doing it. And they'll be like, man, Spencer is really worshipful right now. And so I should be worshipful too. That's not what we're supposed to do on Sunday. There's an aspect of what we do in that, but we are to lead our church. So first and foremost, think of other people. It's not about you and your personal worship. It's about you and your church and your corporate worship of God. It is all of you combining together to point to the worthiness of God. So start thinking about leading worship in that way, and that will guide and form the decisions that you make in your planning, in your song choice, in your speaking transitions, in how you lead on Sunday morning, and it will create a cohesive worship experience where everyone is worshiping together, and you will not lose your church in worship. There they were, 3 easy ways to lose your church in worship. Don't do those things. Don't pick songs and put them in keys that only you can sing in. Don't pick songs that only you want to sing because they're your favorite John Mark McMillan song. And don't focus on personal worship above corporate worship. Do the opposite of those things and you will not lose your church in worship. Hey, before you go, not only is it important to lead your church well, but it's important to lead your worship team well. And one of the best ways to do that is through your worship rehearsals. And that's why I put together the free PDF worship rehearsal blueprint. It's linked down in the description below. In it, I share with you the 5-piece worship rehearsal that will let you have the best worship rehearsal you've ever had. You've ever had. I feel like I emphasized that really weird. It will let you have a great worship rehearsal that leads your team well relationally, spiritually, and musically. So check that out down in the description below. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me. Until I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well.